Diesel. He comes every 2 weeks, and this is his face beat tail day. Just kind of a neat one. Not a fan of having his front feet done. I was thinking, I was watching one of the groomer sites on Facebook. This grooming owner, this business owner, she was complaining about one of her groomers who had applied for a job and said she could do like 6 to 8 dogs a day, all sizes, whatever. She had a bather, but for some reason or other, the groomer had decided to stop doing big dogs. I don't know how old she was or anything like that. And she was asking, what she should do about this groomer. And I mean, honestly, if she needs a groomer that can do 6 to 8 dogs and do all sizes, then she needs to let the groomer go. But it reminded me of my younger days as a groomer, working for other people, and just how stressed out I became trying to complete a bunch of grooms. And I mean, this went on for years and years, because I've been grooming like 20 years. We've only owned this business for like 10 of those years. And I can just remember having utter anxiety during the day and not even taking a lunch break because there were so many dogs to groom. And I never, one of my favorite parts about grooming was, going home and feeling like I had done a good job, and but I just remember that doing all those dogs just absolutely sucked the passion out of grooming. And I understand, like, new groomers, they need to, make money and things like that. And I will say that I trained under, after I graduated from grooming school, I trained under some really good groomers, and then I took the extra step and I got a show poodle, and I showed poodles for other people, and I went to seminars, but that was just in my early days. And then after so many years, it was just pretty much about survival, just getting through the day. And I remember hurting my back on a standard poodle. It was just a day that I was like super, super rushed. And I went to pick the dog up and put it in the tub because we don't have a tub lift. And when I bent down, I hurt my back, but nobody really cared. And they, we were always getting overbooked. And, I'd always step up and do extra dogs. I mean, I was doing like 10, 15 dogs a day. This included like standard poodles and giant schnauzers, just all kinds of stuff. And you just get to a point where I think the worst day was when we'd finished the dogs. We finally got through all the dogs. And, once again we were overbooked. And, once again I had groomed all these dogs. And then it just dawned on me, like, I've done all this. I've helped, the salon get through this. But tomorrow it's just going to be the same exact thing. And it seems like so many salons they just don't really care how long your body lasts. They don't care about your anxiety. They don't care about your passion. There's just so many salons like that. And I remember at one point I cut back to 8 dogs. Well, one salon, I was grooming so many dogs, I was literally losing track of it. And then came to find out, they weren't even writing the dogs down under my name. They were writing them down under the business owner's name. So I wasn't even getting paid for a lot of the dogs I was grooming. And then you have business owners that, steal tips. You groom so many dogs and you'd think, like, surely there's a tip or something. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I remember the one business owner that, I groomed all these dogs for. And, I finally decided, okay, I'm going to slow down a little bit. And his comment to me was, well, if you don't want to work, senorita. I was absolutely floored. I was completely floored because I groomed so many dogs for these people. And I remember one day I groomed like, I don't know, it was 15, 16 dogs. It might have been more. But for some reason or another, the business owner's wife called me at home throwing a fit because supposedly one of the dogs that I got put down for didn't get groomed. And I told her, I was like, you're so upset about one groom that didn't get done, but you have nothing positive to say about the 15, 16 dogs I groomed. Nothing. Not, hey, this happened, nothing. She just called me to chew me out. And then I find out later on that what was actually going on was that the business owner, when he had more than he could chew, he'd bitten off more than he could chew, he was going back and putting dogs under my name. So that after I finished all of my dogs, I was expected to go back and groom the dogs that he didn't finish. But that was never the case for me. And I just got to thinking about this poor groomer. It's just like, it takes about an hour to groom a dog, which, granted, she had a bather. But, I mean, when you say 6 to 8 dogs, what are you talking about? Because some dogs are kind of difficult, you know? And then what do they want you to do? Well, a dog comes in the middle of your day, and you're expected to groom all these dogs, and then what do? They take walk-in nail trims. I stopped doing that because some of these nail trims, they can take upwards of 20 minutes just to do the nails. And you're not getting paid for all that time. What's happening is that you're losing time on your own flock. And then you're going to get chewed out when you can't complete all your grooms. Some dogs are matted. Some dogs are difficult. You know, some dogs require more blending. You know, what kind of haircuts are you doing? I mean, there's so many things. There's so many factors in this. But yet, people are just concerned about numbers. You know? I don't know. I remember I just absolutely lost every bit of passion that I had for grooming. It was just going to work every day and trying to survive. And, you know, honestly, when you get to that point, the best thing that you could have done during all of those horrible years is to save some money. Save as much money as you possibly can. And when you've gotten to the point where you're completely burnt out, or you're tired, and no one has any feeling, any recognition of anything that you've done, take that money that you've saved, and it's time to open a business. You know? I don't have any employees. I don't have a receptionist. I don't have other groomers. It's just me. And I'm going to say also, too, though, some groomers have a really bad attitude. Some people just get in it because they think that there's big money in it. And they don't care about the business they work at. But that's not the case for a lot of groomers, you know. Just remember going to grooming school and absolutely loving grooming. Then I got started, and it was like every bad thing you could think of. People complaining, you know, because, I don't know, you want to take a lunch break or a smoke break or just a freaking mental break. Or, you know, people complaining because they want you to do all of these dogs, and then you come back the next day and it's the same exact shit. thing is that, you know, typical fashion, she just said, she won't groom all these dogs. She didn't happen to say, like, she does a good job, she does a bad job. You know, maybe takes a little more time with the dogs. You know, is she a good groomer? You know, is she just losing heart because it just, you know, time just repeats over and over? You know, people just don't realize what groomers have to go through. You know, passionate groomers. I'm not talking about these people that sign on to the choo-choo train of grooming because they think, you know, oh, I'm just going to make a bunch of money. Because there is good money in grooming. But, you know, their heart is never in it. You know, their grooms are subpar. But she gave no other information about this groomer. Yeah, and now that people are scheduling groomers by the hour, they're paying them by the hour. It's just like, you know, then they want to get all this work out of them. Well, a big dog takes 2 hours. You know, it can take upwards of 2 hours. You know, consider you're there for 8 hours. Well, that's just 4 big dogs. You know. I've done it though. I mean, you just run a guard over it and trim it up a little bit, and that's about the best you can do. You don't have time to be patient. I just think that those salons need to go exempt. They need to go extinct. But, you know, every grooming shop has something to offer. And, you know, there's a bunch of salons around me. And, you know, I try to get people's dog in and out. I do one dog at a time. You know, I try to do, you know, the best job I can do within that amount of time. You know. But my biggest thing is just that the dog, you know, feels pretty good about itself when it leaves. If you're passionate about grooming and you're running into this, running a grooming business is not really difficult. If you can get a good amount of rent, or maybe you can just, you know, get a van, or, you know, maybe you can do it out of your house or go to people's houses or whatever. But just get out of that scenario, because it's never going to change. And, you know, they'll act like they appreciate you so much, but actions speak way louder than words. Try to let this grow back in. He lost his hair due to it. He got fleas one time and had a horrible reaction. So I'm gonna try to let this grow in and fill in his ears.
See his little star nose?
I remember when back in the day, like somebody would talk about lunch, and we would just laugh as groomers because, like, what are you talking about lunch? You don't have lunch. I even remember, like, grooming. I had a standard poodle. I had a bunch of dogs, and I was pretty fast. You know, I was really fast. And the groomer that was in front of me, you know, beside me, she decided she wanted to go home. So what did she do? She just turned around and looked at me and was like, I really have to go. I need you to do this dog for me. And then she tells the owner, Tracy said she would do this dog for me. What are you talking about? Anyway, so then I got her standard poodle on top of my load. Lovely stuff, huh? Alright. Here we go. Look. Diesel. There's Diesel. With his little goatee. Alright. Bye.